Stop right there. This is a courtesy spoiler alert. If you don't want to see what I'm making yet, then you should jump ahead to about here. Alright, still watching? Cool. Dun da da da. This is a cube, and it only has one side. I'm calling it a Mobius cube because it's sort of like a Mobius strip. You know that old demonstration of a ring that only has one side? Only this is in cube form, but really the cube part isn't important. I could stretch this into any shape and it would still be a four-sided Mobius strip. Sorry, I mean one-sided. But it's square. And a cube. And if all that wasn't interesting enough, it's made from a single piece of metal. No seams, no joints, no screws, just a block. So I guess that makes this a one-piece, one-sided cube. Okay, I'm done botching this intro. Let's just make the thing. A single part project is something I would normally just draft on paper, but considering I had a hard time even wrapping my brain around this one, I let something with much faster synapses do the work. I'm not going to go into great detail of the modeling though, because looking at someone else's screen while looking at your own screen is some Inception levels of boring. But I will say that it involved a 3D sweep, a pattern, a whole bunch of fillets, which are critical for calling this thing single-sided, and one small change to the symmetry. As far as the overall shape, that isn't important either. I just picked something that I thought looked cool, and should be just challenging enough to make it actually fun to machine. Speaking of, this is one of the few projects that I basically threw design for manufacturing out with the bathwater. So this is going to be a jacuzzi to figure out. But I did spend a little time on some drawings that I think will get me there. Now I've got a lot of aluminum blocks to choose from here. Some might say an unhealthy amount. So I'm going to use this hunk of steel. Really though, I don't want to go through all this and end up with some rinky-dinky part in the end. No, I want this thing to have some substance to it. Some heft. Like you might need a permit to carry it in public. Anyway, this was literally the only piece of steel I had large enough for the job. And of course the first step of making a one-sided shape is to add more sides to it. Well, that took a bit longer than I expected, but I got it to the right general shape. This is going to be a heck of a lot easier to machine all the details though if this thing is truly cubular. Cubical? If it's a cube. Now squaring usually takes a while, but this one was driving me absolutely mad. I was running into this annoying issue where I couldn't get anything to come out actually square, like by several thousandths of an inch. I was too frustrated to film at the time, but after checking the tram of the mill spindle and vise, I discovered the problem was something I never considered before. When I clamp something in the vise, it actually wants to flex like this a little bit, lifting one side of the part. And this swivel base was part of the problem. Getting that thing out of the mix and putting the vise directly on the table gave me way more support and the problem basically disappeared. Or at least enough to get everything within 1/1000th of an inch of square. Pretty amazing how even after the 100th time doing something so basic, you can still learn something new. Anyway, we can finally get to some of the fun details. Starting with a hole. Bunch of holes. A lot of holes. These are each at internal corners and will hopefully make the milling come out a little nicer. Plus they should act as a pretty good visual aid so I don't mess something up. But that's only if I get these right to start with, so a little craft time should help keep things straight. The rest of this is just more and more holes. How hard could it be? Should have knocked on wood. I mean, I'm literally surrounded by it. The drill, understandably, snapped off after plunging into a crosshole a little too aggressively. Luckily, that crosshole was my savior here. It can't be stuck if it's in pieces. That was a close call that almost scrapped this part. I'm going to have to avoid these careless mistakes if I want to make it all the way through this thing. You know who isn't careless though? Henson Shaving, the sponsor of today's video. Henson started out as a high-precision aerospace machining company that expanded into consumer razors, and they brought all that precision with them in the process, making the Henson AL13 a literal aerospace-grade razor. But other than just sounding badass, that actually makes a huge difference to the performance. With the tolerances held on every razor, Henson can achieve blade support super close to the cutting edge and keep blade exposure within a couple 10,000ths of an inch. This means a more comfortable shave than your typical unsupported multi-blade razors. Plus, you don't have to buy into proprietary expensive cartridges that are also wasteful. The all-metal construction means this razor was built to last a lifetime. Doesn't get more sustainable than that. Not to mention the low cost of ownership. The blades are cheap and can be found anywhere, so if you shave every day like me, shaving for as little as $5 a year means you can save money for other things. And I haven't even mentioned that my wife actually uses this and loves it as well. Use the code INHERITANCE at hensonshaving.com/inheritance or use the link in the description to get 100 free blade refills with your order. Thank you, Henson, for sponsoring this video and for yet another fun shave. Now, let's see what the wife thinks of this one.
No, what are you doing? What are you doing? Stop.
What? I can't be sexy? You ready?
Hell no. Not the stash again.
But it's different. The last one was very thick porn stashy, and this is more of a Brad Pitt. Nothing?
No.
What if I take my shirt off?
No. Okay, well, that makes me dumb. Oh, I hate it so much.
This is probably the best one, my favorite of the three that we've done so far.
What is the thing under the lip?
It's called a soul patch.
Well, they're longer though. Like it would need to be down to here.
No.
Yeah, it needs to be like...
It just needs, it's just a hint, just a flavor, just an accent. It's a tasteful soul patch. If you get too thick, it just becomes a little too soulful. I did notice while doing all this that I've got some gnarly ass ear hairs coming in on both sides. I shouldn't look like my grandfather at the age of 33.
I'm trying to decide if shorter hair would be better with it.
Gotta give you a smolder. What do you mean shorter? This is about as short as it goes. I like messing with you, but I thought you would actually like this one.
It's not horrible.
It's coming around. It's only been 5 minutes and you're already coming around.
I like one version of facial hair, and that is all of it.
The point of the advertisement is that I use a razor.
Yeah.
The only facial hair you like is the hair that's not been removed by razor. Is it actually growing on you?
A little bit.
Or are you just playing me up?
No, I keep like looking.
Yeah, so much for that. Let's get back to our Swiss cheese. I'm sure you can imagine how the rest of this went, but I did come back and add even more holes to each face that I realized I would need. I was even getting to the point where I could recall the coordinates from each without even looking at the drawing. And of course that complacency is what bit me yet again. Literally on one of the last couple holes, I misplaced it by 50,000ths of an inch. And not in a favorable direction. It's a small mistake and it's going to eat at me, but there's just not enough room in the box of shame for this one. So we're going to keep on trucking. And this is where the challenges really begin. Obviously, the shape is going to be tedious to mill out, but the real problem is work holding. The more material I remove, the weaker it gets, meaning I won't be able to just clamp onto it in any old position without it flexing. My strategy will be a lot more interesting though if I just explain as we go. Plus, I also don't know exactly how I'm going to do it at the moment. But it seems like a good idea to start on this side so I can hollow out as much of the inner material as possible. I'll need to hold it at a 45-degree angle though, so first a little setup. I did think ahead enough to include one extra hole directly in the middle of the block so I can re-establish my coordinate system. And from here, it's just a whole bunch of milling. Honestly, if I knew why this kablooied, I would tell you, but I got nothing. A 1/4 incher takes care of the finishing pass near the top, then might as well get the angled sections on the outside while we're here too. While I've still got my 0 point for this angled setup, I'll also knock out the slanted pockets on the sides. I mentioned before about basically ignoring design for manufacturing, but I did at least make one consideration for tooling diameter. This 1/4 inch end mill flexes quite a bit under load, so I made all the negative spaces in the cube at least 0.3 inches wide for some wiggle room. This lets me get a nice unobstructed finishing pass on both sides. If you're wondering why that end mill suddenly changed colors like a chameleon, it's a poor disguise to hide that someone, I won't say who, got a little too ambitious. Alright, that's all the slants complete and only 2 casualties in the process. On the bright side, I think I see a path forward to finishing this out without any of those clamping problems I mentioned. So back to square, I'll start cutting out the hunks of material in the corners. This is where those pilot holes really start to become invaluable. They really give a clear picture of where I need to go. So rather than having to keep track of like 10 numbers, I only have to verify a couple critical ones. The rest is all just by eyeball. I did end up changing my strategy a bit at this point. These long end mills are just so flexible. You can actually see them wiggling around while they work. And I just don't trust myself to not break another one. So I'm hedging my bets and running a short one as deep as I can. Only jumping to the longer ones when I absolutely need to. It's a bit tedious, but I've already blown my tooling budget out of the water, and frankly, it's getting a little embarrassing. Now, I never verified that coming at each of these corners from 3 different angles will actually clear up all the material in the middle. It'd be really silly to end up with a mangled and deformed chunk of metal trapped inside this like some sort of mutant bird in a cage, so I'm basically just crossing my fingers. Alright, I'm to the point I can't ignore my little boo-boo anymore. Talking about this hole that I drilled in the wrong spot. I could either leave it how it is and just live with my mistake, or I could try to fill weld it with a couple tacks and then finish machine it, which I'm not so sure won't look like poo either. So I'm going to do a little practice run on this test piece. And for those of you who've been around here for a long time wondering why I've never talked about having a welder, well, surprise, I have a welder. It's nothing special though, and borderline out of gas, but should get me through this little job. I'm not proud, but it doesn't have to look pretty. Let's clean it up. Not perfect, but I think I can manage a little better on the actual part. So here goes nothing. I'm not gonna lie, this is one of the most stressful things I've done in a while. If I get too careless, I could cock this whole thing up in a hurry, and basically throw all my work up to now down the drain. Okay, it's still in one piece. Seems like I need a couple more tacks. Well, that turned out way better than I was even expecting. Good job, bro. Let's keep the ball rolling and do the top and bottom. That's almost all the outside finished, but you're probably seeing one big problem. This thing still has some guts on the inside. Luckily I did notice this was going to happen just a little while back, and had a chance to come up with a game plan. Which is basically just to stand this thing up at an angle to reach down in those nether regions. One hunk down. We are successfully hollow. It looks a little rough on the inside where the cutter marks overlap, but there was really only so much I could do about that. This thing is really starting to show its flexibility. Anyway, now I'm to a pivotal point in the machining. When I thought through my order of operations, I was able to narrow it down to one critical step that makes this all possible. These last two cuts on each side face. Once I remove this material, this whole thing basically becomes a big goofy spring. And springs are hard to hold on to without also affecting their dimensions, hence saving these cuts for last.
Of course.
The initial excitement of making this thing has officially worn off. Despite waxing on and on about cautiously handling this springiness, it still bit me. The whole part shifted while I was milling this particular slot, and it took a hefty scoop out of one side in the process. I'll address this in a minute, but first I need to find a better way to hold on to this. Okay, I've got it. It can't be a spring if you don't let it be. So I'll pop my machinist jack inside here to hopefully prevent the thing from collapsing in the vise. And if I'm being honest, I was being way too aggressive with those cuts earlier, so I'll cut each slot with 3 shallow passes rather than all at once. Alright, now to fix this. Again. Well, it took a couple tries to get it all filled in, but considering I can hardly find the mistake anymore, I'm going to say that's good enough. And now we've come to the final step. By my own definition of this thing being one-sided, I need to add rounds to all the outside corners to sort of connect the important faces. And if you've seen my videos before, you probably know exactly how I'm going to do this. With my beloved rotary fixture. After finding the center of the fixture, I can use the pin to also set the positions of the guides. This gets the corners I intend to round in the right position, and then I can just clamp the part down, or almost at least. I should have known better than to think I could make it through this whole video without at least one side project. 2 longer bolts coming up. Order up. Alright, time to round this project out. Of course, the springiness is biting me again. Even with the jack in the middle and the guides and clamp, I can really only make very light cuts without the whole thing wanting to shift out of position. So this is a bit slow going. On the bright side, the guides make it easy to bounce from side to side as I work through the outside corners. To get the rest of the corners, I obviously have to change those guide positions. And this is where things get really tedious. Each of these setups only lets me knock out a few of the rounds at a time before having to change setups again. While this looks like it's going okay, just clamping on the part fluxes things out of position slightly. So I have to adjust the cut while simultaneously sweeping the table to get the round to feather out nicely on both ends. Not exactly precise, but given the circumstances, my standards have gotten a little elastic. 56 corner rounds later, and this thing is done. I'm sure you're wondering at this point, why? Why would I make this thing? Well, I'm not even sure anymore. I guess it was fun, in a not so fun kind of way. There is a lot of finishing I could do to get this looking really sharp, but this thing has already taken enough out of me. So I'm just going to give it a quick deburr with the Dremel tool, and then a once over with the orbital sander. Given all the elasticity problems I had with this, especially near the end, I'm glad I made this thing out of steel and not aluminum. Plus, it does have a pretty decent weight to it. Actually, let's see how it compares to before machining. That's quite a difference, but still properly lethal. Anyway, I guess I only have one thing left to do. Prove this cube only has one side. Remember on the Mobius strip, you can draw a line on one side, but you have to make 2 laps to get back where you started. So let's do the same thing here. There's one, and you can see it doesn't line up where I started. 2 gets me another face over. 3, and 4 laps, all done with one continuous line, and therefore, by my definition, one single face. Pretty cool, huh? Not exactly worth the effort, but still cool. Since I modeled this, I figured I would make the file available for anyone who wants to replicate it, so check the link in the description. Should be a piece of cake for a 3D printer. But if you have a screw loose, or 3, you might enjoy machining it as well. And if you do, I want to see it. Anyway, here's to another mostly successful project. Not exactly the functional kind of thing I go for, but sometimes you get a crazy itch and you just gotta scratch it. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time. hate it? I'm gonna wear it for a few days and see if you like it. Just imagine me coming back from the gym, all sweaty, take my shirt off.
No, stop! If we're ranking what's the ones I've hated most, the porn stash is top.
You hated most?
Yes.
Like,
this is a very close second.
you like the Fu Manchu better than this?
Yeah, I like the baby Hulk Hogan better than this.
This one I thought you would like the most.
But I find those less disturbing than the solitary shoulder hair.
This one?
It's like
the one hair?
The one hair. I cut your hair, so I know that it can be cut shorter than it is.
By like 1/8 of an inch.
1/8 of an inch makes a big difference.